Hello, everybody. This is Alan Stout from the Music on the Menu radio show, doing what I will call my podcast from home number 6. For about the past 2 months or more now, 2.5 months, I've been doing an occasional podcast where I just chat with you guys a little bit about music. I started doing these shortly after the Music on the Menu radio show went on hiatus, which happened when Mohegan Sun Pocono was closed down due to COVID-19. And so I've kind of enjoyed, coming to you from this angle. Actually, it's been kind of different and fun just to chat a little bit. If you've been following the Music on the Menu page on social media, or you subscribe to the Music on the Menu YouTube channel, or even if you follow me on my personal page, if we're friends on Facebook, you probably know that also for the past 2 months or so, I have been doing an interview series called the Music on the Menu COVID-19 podcast series, podcast interview series. And on that series, what I tried to do throughout this whole pandemic, and we just found out today that, Luzerne County is going to move into the green next week. So we are, we're getting there. But what I tried to do was, talk to people involved with music about how it was affecting them and the business in general. Obviously, we've lost over 100,000 people to COVID-19 in this country. Obviously, that is paramount. That is the first thing that, we should all keep in mind. And I know we all do. You don't need me to tell you that. But, keeping the frontline people in mind, the doctors, the nurses, and the people that lost family members and the people that passed, that is obviously paramount. But for me, what I do, I thought, well, let's see what's going on out there. And so for the past 2.5 months, I talked to record producers, I talked to working musicians, I talked to venue managers, large venue managers that run big arenas and people that run small clubs, sound technicians, people that put together festivals, anybody that I could think of, people that own record stores, people that own music stores, people that rent sound and lighting equipment, anybody that I could think of that were in my, circle of friends and colleagues that I thought might have an interesting story to tell, I talked to, and they all had interesting stories to tell. And so I want to thank Brett Alexander, Jimmy Harnon, AJ Jump, Bill Kelly, Joe Nardone Jr., Will Beekman, Dustin Douglas, Richie Kosis, Ellie Rose, Joe Bagleski, Patrick McGlynn, Chris Ludzik, Richard Briggs, Eddie Apnell, Lorene Bohannon, Tom Flannery, Mike Miz, Michael Cloran, and Aaron Fink for all taking the time to talk to us, not just me, but all of us through the podcast, and let us know how they were doing, and let us know how they, work through the whole thing. It was kind of interesting, working through them in the beginning. You go back to more than 2 months ago when I was doing the first ones, and everything was bleak and everything was uncertain, and everybody was just kind of dealing with it and trying to get their head around it all, and everything was just being shut down and canceled, and regarding music, postponed, cancellations, and clubs closing, tours being canceled, festivals being canceled. And then when we finally got to the end, where we did the last one the other day with Michael Cloran, he's actually talking about putting shows back on the calendar in October and November. And so, I kind of felt like we had guided, we kind of walked through the whole thing together through the podcasts, and, 19 seemed like a good number to end it. And so to my COVID-19, as I'll always call you, I again appreciate the time to chat with us. And also I want to mention that in the beginning of COVID-19, we lost Jerry Ludzik. Seems like a long time ago, but, because of all we've gone through since then, but it really wasn't. It was only about 2 months ago that Jerry passed. And so people like Jimmy Harnon and Joe Bagleski and obviously Bill Kelly and Eddie Apnell and Chris Ludzik and some of the people that had worked, Richie Kosis, some of the people that knew Jerry and had worked with Jerry also were kind enough to share their thoughts with us on Jerry's life and his passing. And so not only did we talk about COVID-19 on the interview series, but with quite a few of the guests, we also, obviously out of respect, we talked to Jerry. So that wraps up the COVID-19 series. Again, I appreciate everybody that tuned in. I will leave them up on Facebook, on the website, and also on the YouTube channel forever. No reason to take them down. And like I said on my post the other day, maybe some point years from now, they could serve as a timepiece of the spring of 2020 and sort of help document a challenging time for all of us when it came to music. Next thing I want to talk about are some of the old archive interviews that I have dusted off and posted this week. About 10 years ago, I guess it was, I realized I had some pretty cool interviews on cassette from, when I was working full-time as the music columnist and music editor at the Times Leader. And I converted some of them to MP3s and I put them up on YouTube. And I did Billy Joel and Don Henley, Eddie Van Halen, Steven Tyler, Ray Charles, David Bowie. They were some of the ones that I had posted quite a while ago. Well, we all had a little bit of time on our hands over the past 2 months. I was homebound too. And so I start sifting through some stuff, and I'm going to start to put up some more. And I put 2 up this week, or in the last week or so. Both of them were from Gregg Allman of the Allman Brothers Band. Gregg had just passed away about 2 years ago. The first one was from '98. And it's interesting to listen to that interview because even though he was in a great mood and he was excited about a lot of things, you could tell there was some tension in the band, particularly when I talked to him about Dickie Betts, one of the core members of the Allman Brothers. But I put it up. There was some static on the beginning that used to happen when I used to really get on my nerves when I would do these phone interviews at the Times Leader. There'd be this loud buzz on the cassette tape. I think it was just because of all those computers that were around us all the time. God knows what they were doing to us. Maybe we'll all find out in 20 years. But they sometimes would put a buzz on the tape, and so I wasn't sure if I was going to put that first Gregg Allman one up because there was quite a bit of buzz on the first couple of minutes. But it was such a good interview. I thought, hey, if you're a big fan, you could certainly understand easily what he's saying, and it's worth it. Another cool part about that interview was at some point I had mentioned to him that the Badleys were from northeastern Pennsylvania and that I knew the guys, and they had toured with the Allmans and with Gregg, I guess about 2 or 3 years prior to when I did the interview, and he was really cool about that. He remembered the band well and said some really nice things about Brett Alexander, that he remembered, hanging out with Brett, and called him a true gentleman. And so, kind of cool to have a rock and roll Hall of Famer who is no longer with us, saying some nice things about a musician who means a lot to us here in northeastern Pennsylvania, and a band that still means a lot to us. So that's another reason I wanted to put it up. I thought people would enjoy hearing that. The second interview I did with Gregg that I posted was from 2000. And at that point, they had fired Dickie Betts, at least temporarily. And he talked about that in great detail and was incredibly candid about his own mistakes that he had made in his life and his own battle with addiction and how he had no business being on the stage sometimes when he was. And basically he was saying, and that's what we're trying to do for Dickie. We're trying to get him cleaned up. And at one point he told me that he was welcome to come back to the band if that happened. But funny part about that is, you listen to these interviews years later, and that had just happened with Dickie not long before I interviewed him, where they, supposedly told him he was out of the band by a fax. And so I didn't want it to be the first question I asked him because I wanted to warm him up to it a little bit. And so I guess I felt it was time to go there. And I said, well, that was going to be my next question. And he goes, I know that's what your next question was going to be. The way he said it was pretty cool. It was like, I know that's coming, man. Let's just do it. And he took it on and he answered it with incredible candor. So 2 interviews from the great late Gregg Allman up on the Music on the Menu page now and on the Music on the Menu channel. I've got a couple more I might do soon. I got Jackson Browne and a cool one with Jacob Dylan, who I'm a big fan of, from the Wallflowers, that I might post. It's strange listening to those old interviews, because I've realized that there's quite a few now that I did with people that aren't with us anymore. And so, Gregg Allman, David Bowie, Scott Weiland, Ray Charles, B.B. King, all those interviews, I was extremely fortunate to talk with people like that and talk to them about their music and have those conversations preserved on tape, and now to be able to share them with people, particularly, since they're no longer with us. So you could find all those up on the Music on the Menu channel or on the Facebook page if you'd like. Another thing that I did, and I talked about it on the last podcast during this whole thing, was I watched a lot of documentaries. I'm not a big TV guy, to be honest with you. Anybody that knows me, the radio is on in my house all the time. There's always just music playing. The Yankee game would be the exception. I'll watch the Yanks in the summer, but we can't even do that this year. And so it is not really unusual in my house for the TV not to even be turned on for days at a time. And so, what I did during COVID-19 was I put it on and I watched some great rock documentaries. I love documentaries of any kind for the most part, and particularly ones about music. And so I talked about some of these on one of the earlier podcasts, but, the Echo in the Canyon podcast, which leads into something I'm going to talk about a bit later, that's just a tremendous documentary hosted by Jacob Dylan about the pop folk movement of Southern California of the mid-'60s. So if it's just talking about the Byrds and Buffalo Springfield and the Beach Boys and the Association and the Mamas and the Papas, and just a great sound. I had no idea that it all came from the same place. I didn't know those bands all sort of hunkered down in the same little pocket of Southern California, and they were all friends with each other and supporting each other at the time. And so highly recommend that. I also watched Bruce Springsteen live on Broadway, which was amazing. The Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice, which was terrific. Rolling Thunder, the documentary on the Bob Dylan 75-76 tour, which was terrific. Sound City, David Grohl's terrific documentary on that legendary recording studio in Los Angeles. Absolutely amazing. I talked about all these in more detail on the previous podcast, so I don't want to, get into them all again. But just, I guess I should put on the TV a little bit more on a day where there's not much going on. Maybe a rainy Tuesday night once in a while, and just see what's going on there. And I appreciate the people that recommended docs to me too, because a lot of people, when I started posting them, said you should check this one out and you should check this one out. I know that's how I found out about Echo in the Canyon, which like I said, was really good. I guess another thing regarding music that I'll remember throughout the whole worst part of COVID-19, when we were really hunkered down in the red zone, was hear those fireworks going off, people? This is what happens now. It's June 4th, not July 4th, it's June 4th. And yet people now set up fireworks every single night. I don't really know what that's all about. It doesn't bother me that much. Some people get mad. I don't care that much, as long as they're not doing it in my yard, whatever. But anyway, if you hear that in the background, just some guy blowing stuff up a block or two away. One of the things that I will remember is the One World Together at Home, the concert that was done on television, I guess about 6 weeks ago. I loved it for a lot of reasons. It wasn't a fundraiser. They weren't asking people to make a donation or anything, because I think they knew everybody wasn't working and nobody knew if they were going to have, what their income was going to be. They just did it. They just did it to entertain people and raise awareness about the virus and shine the light on the workers, the doctors and the nurses. And the artists just came in every 10 minutes or so. They'd come in with a new artist, sitting down at their house with a guitar or a piano and play a song. Not a lot of fuss, everybody low key. And I thought it was beautiful. And I think that will be remembered for a long time. So probably not going to remember like Live Aid or Woodstock or anything, because You know, you have the epic crowds and the moment and the energy of a concert stage and the volume and all the stuff that makes grand festivals memorable. But from a human perspective, I think maybe we could put it right there, and with those other events as a way that music brought people together at a certain point in time. Another thing I want to talk to you about, which involves music, is something really amazing that kind of happened completely by coincidence last week. I think a lot of people, especially in film, music can really enhance any film, any piece of video that's set to the right music. It can resonate with you. It can make the connection more. And I kind of had something happen to me about a week ago that was completely by chance, that involved music, and since it got so much attention on social media, more than anything I've ever posted on social media in my life, I'll tell you a little bit about how it happened. I right from the beginning, I'll tell you the story. I'm one of these guys that will not go out and buy new sneakers until they're pretty much ready for the garbage can. I don't know why. I don't like shopping like most men. I don't like going to buy stuff. That's not my thing. And I'm not a big fan of malls and stores. And so, if I got a pair of sneaks and they're hanging and they're doing their job, I say, okay, they're fine. Once I start walking around in like the rain and I can feel like the bottom of my feet getting wet, then I might decide to go buy a new pair of sneakers. So that's what happened to me right in the middle of the pandemic. And so I couldn't go anywhere to buy a pair of sneakers. So, and I looked at some online, but I didn't like any of the styles. And some of them were out of stock even online, because I guess a lot of people were trying to buy shoes online because the stores were closed. So I said, all right, I'll just wait till we get into the yellow and I'll go buy some sneakers. So we go into the yellow last week, finally. And I said, I'll go over to Boscov's and I'll get a pair of sneaks. They have Nike and Reebok and Adidas and all the good brands there. And the other shoe stores weren't even open, like the ones up by the hub. And so I go over to Boscov's and I'm looking at some sneaks. And while I'm driving over, I see the protesters on Public Square, protesting, what happened in Minnesota. And I took notice of them, and I thought what they were doing was fantastic. And I went into Boscov's, and then I went over to Musical Energy, which is a great record store right across the street from Boscov's. I love that store. And they were also closed for 10 or 11 weeks during COVID-19, and they reopened last weekend too. And so, getting back to Echo in the Canyon, when I watched Echo in the Canyon, I was digging the tunes, and I said, I want to go buy, I'm going to get some of this music when the record store is open. I like CDs. I'm not a big download MP3 guy. I like to have a collection of discs. So I go over to Musical Energy, and I buy a Buffalo Springfield record, which was one of the great bands featured in the Echo in the Canyon. I always love that song, For What It's Worth, which is so synonymous with the Vietnam films. You always see it in Vietnam documentaries, and it's used in movies. It's a 60s protest song written at the height of the Vietnam era. So I buy the record, and I pop in the car, and I pop it in my CD player in my car, and it's the first song on the record is For What It's Worth. Now I'm circling around Public Square, and the protesters are there, and I decide, well, this is amazing. I want to shoot some of this. Maybe I'll get some video for my kids. I like to keep them in tune with current events. And for young kids, only 11 and 13 years old, they're pretty engaged in the news. They like to watch the news with me and know what's going on. And we have some pretty good discussions about things going on in the world with my children. So, I'm driving along Public Square, and I'm playing this song that I just bought on a record that I planned to buy 6 weeks ago, as soon as I could. Happens to be the song that's playing, and I kind of realized, wow, this really fits the mood here. This song is kind of about exactly what I'm seeing. It's about people protesting in the streets and marching with signs, and young people speaking their minds. And so I'm stopped at the red light. Right, if you turned right, you would go on to South Main, and if you would turn left, you would go towards Public Square and around the square. And I'm filming these kids protesting. I call them kids because I'm 52, so I could do that now. They were young people, most of them, and great bunch of young people. And the light turns green, and so I got to move. This car is behind me, and so I start moving forward. And I figure, okay, I'm done with the filming now. I got to start driving. And I notice all the kids are starting to pour into the street. And I'm like, I got to stop. So I lay on the brake, and I thought they were crossing over to like Rodano's over there. They weren't. They were pouring into the street because they were going to march around the square. And they kind of circled my car. And I'm kind of in the middle of it now. They're in front of me, and they're kind of pouring around the side of my car. And so I just, okay. So very slowly and respectfully, I start following them. And, all of a sudden, I'm kind of swept up into this whole protest march with my car. And I'm filming it as I'm playing this song about marching in protests. And so I've kind of got the music even going. And I'm just telling you guys, it wasn't planned that way. I went over, I didn't know there was going to be a protest. I went over town to do some shopping. I bought a CD that I had been planning to buy for 6 weeks or so. As soon as the record stores open, I knew I wanted to go get some of that, Southern California folk rock stuff. And it was surreal. I mean, I really, I realized as it was happening, this is kind of weird. This is, and so, I threw the video up on Facebook with the song. Now, normally Facebook will flag a song that has a copyrighted song on it. They didn't do it. I don't know why. And boom, I thought, well, some of my friends will enjoy seeing it. And as of today, it was seen by more than 45,000 people. And it was shared by close to 800 people. And obviously, people I don't even know. And so I'm not sure quite what happened there. If you ever hear of synchronicity and Carl Jung and all that stuff, sometimes, you step right into it. And I kind of feel like that may have been what happened there, where all the stars just aligned, because, it wasn't something I planned to do. It wasn't like I'm going to go shoot the protesters, and I'm going to play For What It's Worth, and I'm going to drive around the square with them. Not at all. And that's what happened, and I totally supported what they were doing. I gave them the thumbs up when I saw them the first time, when I first got to downtown. And so I totally believed in what they were doing and supported it. And I just got a little bit lucky because I wound up, documenting it, and a lot of people seemed to enjoy it. And so if it helped raise awareness to what they were doing in a positive way, and they were doing it very positively. They were socially distancing. They were protesting peacefully. They, most of them were wearing masks. So I was proud of Wilkes-Barre and how things went down. And then I guess the next day, things happened in Scranton very similarly. And they've continued on several nights here in northeastern Pennsylvania in both cities with no issues. Rumors of some issues one night, but nothing came of it. So that's it. Like I said, if you believe in synchronicity, check it out on the Facebook page if you haven't seen it yet. It's on, I think I just put it on my personal page. I don't think I put it on Music on the Menu, but it's public. It's a public post. So if you want to see it, you can check it out there. The last thing I want to talk about is I do not get political on the radio show. I do not get political on the Music on the Menu page. I will sometimes get a little bit political on my personal page because that's my page. And so since this is a Music on the Menu podcast and it's kind of going to go on both, I'm not going to get too political here. Other than to say that I totally support the peaceful protesters. I believe that a full prosecution of all 4 police officers is merited. I believe that the charges that were made, which were increased from 3rd to 2nd degree, are merited. I've heard the stories about George Floyd that have come out in the news. He was no angel. Those cops probably knew him when they saw him, and they probably said, "Oh man, this guy again." That's a fact, and that's part of the story. But it's not any excuse to murder a man on camera. Well, forget the camera. That's what brought all this on. It was not any excuse to do what they did. Absolutely no excuse. And so that's not a political statement. I'm not bringing any politicians into the discussion. This racism's been going on in this country for centuries. Nobody started it in Washington. How they react to it is up for discussion. I won't do that here on this podcast, but you can mourn the loss of George Floyd, and you can mourn the loss for his family. You can believe that the police officers were 100% wrong. You can believe that they should be convicted to the fullest extent of the law and possibly serve life in prison, and yet not, turn the victim into a saint. You can realize, but the fact is the man had done his time. He was a free citizen, and supposedly he was trying to pass a fake 20, which is, I've probably done it, and so have you. And so, I'll just leave that there. I support the protesters, and I would be happy to march with any of them any time without making it a political statement, but more of an American, long-standing American problem. I posted a story up on my Facebook page tonight that I wrote 20 years ago about Bruce Springsteen's American Skin, an amazing song about an incident that, similar in some ways, where an African American in New York City was falsely identified as someone that had committed a crime and was shot 41 times by the police while he was trying to reach for his wallet to show them who he was and that he had no weapon on him, which he did not. And so the fact that 29 years after Rodney King and 20 years after American Skin, we're still talking about it is very saddening. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, everybody that has turned into the podcast. Thank you for everybody that shared music with me. We have so much great music to put on the radio for you. I've gotten a ton of stuff in over the last 6 weeks or so. I believe our first show, when we get back on the air, the whole hour is going to be nothing but new songs that have come in. So, the fact that we haven't been able to get into the casino and do the show, I still appreciate the fact that we haven't been forgotten and that, all the artists out there are still sending me their stuff, and I've been emailing them all and telling them I have it and that it will get on the air as soon as we can. And that will hopefully be within a week or so. I also want to thank all the artists who performed for us during COVID-19. All of you guys that, did the streams from home and the live webcasts and everything. I mean, I spent a lot of time watching them, and I enjoyed them, and it was great to see your faces, and it was great to hear your songs. And so thank you for, figuring out how we could do something during all this. I think that's what I tried to do with the podcast. That's what the artists tried to do with the performances from their living rooms. And so, when it's all said and done, I think we all did the best we could. And hopefully we'll all get back to 100% normal sooner rather than later. I don't believe that the new normal is going to not be the old normal. I don't believe that we're going to go to concerts and there's only going to be, empty rows between us, and there's going to be ballparks that are half empty or empty. I don't think the American public will stand for that. It's not what we want. We want the new normal to be the old normal, and that might take a year or so, but I do believe that we're going to get there. And when we get there, I can't wait to see y'all again. I'll give you a hug, which we're not allowed to do right now. All right, everybody, I hope to get you on the radio soon. I'll probably do these podcasts maybe once in a great while, when maybe something happens in music big that I want to talk about for a little bit longer than I normally would on the show on Sunday nights. But, for now, I'm putting these to bed as well. I don't want to talk about COVID-19 anymore. I just want to work through it like everybody else. And I want to get back to playing you some music on the radio. Stay safe. God bless you all. And we'll catch you on the flip side.